Robert Plank Show, episode 119. Get what you want, become a high achiever, and overcome procrastination with Chris Friesen. Go to robertplank.com/iTunes as we're getting started up here to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Robert Plank Show where we talk about making money. Now, I have a quick question for you. Are you unsure of your life's purpose? Are you afraid you're living below your true potential? Do you have trouble staying motivated and focused on your goals? Well, if any of those sound like you, or they could sound like you, or they do sound like you at times, we have Dr. Chris Friesen. He's author of the book Achieve, Find Out Who You Are, What You Really Want, and How to Make It Happen. He's going to be talking to us about all kinds of cool and fun mindset stuff. How are things today, Dr. Chris?
They're very good. Thanks for having me on your show.
Cool. I'm glad to have you here. So tell me about yourself and tell me about, about this book and what you do and about all the cool things you can do to help people here.
Sure, sure. I'm a psychologist. I'm trained as a clinical, forensic, and neuropsychologist. These are fancy ways of saying trained to diagnose and assess people with emotional problems, criminal problems, of course, that's forensic, and neuropsychology is brain problems like Alzheimer's, brain injuries, strokes, that kind of thing. But a lot of my work these days is really focused on what I call high achievers. These are just people. A lot of them are athletes, professional, some Olympic, but also entrepreneurs, writers, academics, people who just want to take their game, their life to the next level. So I do work with people. And long story short, I wrote a book, this book that you just described, which is the first part of the High Achievement Handbook. Is going to be three actual books in the series. This one is really about, exactly like you said, finding out who you are, what's really important to you, what you really want, and to make sure that what you do with your life on a day-to-day basis is actually, the right thing for you, and then how to make it happen on a day-to-day basis in terms of being productive, efficient, that kind of thing.
And that's cool. And I think that, the people that were making this show for are online entrepreneurs. And I keep thinking back to, when I had like the day job mindset, right? And now I have like the entrepreneur mindset. And it seems like, let me know your thoughts on this, but it feels like to me that, a lot of people there's a lot of people who haven't quite like woken up yet, right? People who are kind of like at their day job doing the whatever 9 to 5 kind of stuff. And it seems like a lot of us have so many things holding us back, but we're not yet really awake. And then I think that a few years ago, when I kind of made the jump from the day job lifestyle to the entrepreneur lifestyle, there was like I had to almost like relearn everything. And the big thing was that all these things that had previously been holding me back, they were still there, but I didn't realize they were there. And it seems almost like making the jump and quitting the day job and starting a business and kind of taking bigger risks kind of brought all these little things in hiding to light. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. When we have day jobs, and I'm actually just kind of like you in a lot of ways. I worked in a hospital setting, I worked in a prison, that kind of thing. And when I kind of broke off and been working on my own for about 6 years now, I guess, just completely on my own as a consultant, I guess you would call it. It's like an entrepreneur in the professional psychology sort of coaching or sports psychology realm. A lot of when we're working for companies, they're very structured. We have to be there at a particular time. We have very set duties to complete and tasks to do. But when we work for ourselves, it's really us, having to motivate ourselves, having to stay on task and to be efficient and productive. And as much as we often daydream when we're at our old jobs, when we're at our day jobs, about how great we could be if we worked on our own. There's a whole bunch of challenges that come up because of one of the main issues is self-motivation, also self-doubt. There's anxiety over sometimes money comes in a lot, you get lots of work, and sometimes money is you're not getting a lot of work, so your income kind of goes up and down as well. So there's a whole bunch of challenges associated with that, and there's a whole bunch of things you can do as well to help yourself cope with those sorts of things.
So, like what?
Yeah, so one thing is, I'll give you one quick example of a strategy you can do. So one thing that happens when you work from home, but this has to do with everything. This has to do with the Olympic athletes I work with. This has to do with it doesn't matter. This applies across the board. Basically, when you have a hard time getting yourself to do something you should be doing. In other words, you're procrastinating. So in other words, you're getting up and you're kind of looking at email. You're never really getting down to the project you wanted to work on. And it's called the 5 minute rule. So what you do is this: you tell yourself and you make a deal, say, listen, I'm going to do the activity, the project or whatever. I'm going to work on my website, whatever it may be, for 5 minutes. And then I'm going to decide if I really want to do it. Because there's actually, we tend to have it backwards when it comes to writing, or, people are writing books, for example, people who have to exercise, people who have to work on a project from home, for example. We often have these negative predictions about how annoying it's going to be, for example, to when you actually start doing it, or that you have to be in the zone, you have to be in the right mindset to start working. And it's actually the opposite. You want to start doing something and then decide, because our predictions of how difficult something is going to be are often way off base. So the trick is simply this: you start the activity, put your timer on for 5 or 10 minutes, whatever you want to do. In the book, I say 5 minutes, and then you decide. Is it as bad as I thought? And if it's anywhere near as bad as you thought, give yourself 100% permission to stop. And the research shows that when you do this, 98% of the time, you basically continue, and it's never as bad as you predicted. That's the hardest thing to do, is to get started, that hump, to get yourself to the desk, to start working. So that's one real quick example of one strategy you can do that will help you be more productive.
And I love that. And what that reminds me of is my sister used when my sister was in college, she would always procrastinate writing term papers until
Mm.
at one point she would just, I would see her sit at the computer and just start typing and open up a Word document, and she would literally just start typing just anything, like even like I'm typing on the computer. I don't feel like writing my term paper, but I'm typing, and just like stream of consciousness now out whatever. And then after about a minute or two, she kind of get bored of that and start actually writing the actual term paper. And then 10 minutes in, well, guess what? Now she feels like doing it once she actually picked up that speed, I guess.
Yes, it's exactly that's exactly true. There's an interesting thing. There's something in my next book I might call it the 10-minute rule. But it's kind of the opposite problem when people have a hard time stopping themselves from doing things they know they shouldn't do. So this could be like when I work with athletes trying to make weight for a sports competition. They you have to strict stay to a strict diet. And so for example, they'll see some sort of food that's sort of off the list, and they want to eat it. So what you do is, when there's something like that, what you do is you put your timer on for 10 minutes, so you don't indulge in the activity. Wait 5 to 10 minutes, and then decide whether you really need to eat that donut. Or for example, you feel the urge to check your email, and you say, look, I'm going to put my timer on for 10 minutes because I have this urge right now to check. I'm going to wait 10 minutes to see if I really need to check email or check Facebook or something like that. And these are very good strategies. There's research to back them up that are really effective to helping you stay on task. In other words, accomplish your actual goals, because often we'll go at the end of the day and you'll feel like, I didn't really do a lot of the things I thought I would do. I had the entire day to work, and I was not as productive as I thought. And strategies like this can be really helpful to keep you on track.
And I like a couple of things about that. I like that. Well, first of all, it almost seems like you've like switched the usual behavior pattern, right? Because usually the thing that I should be doing, I keep putting it off 10 minutes, putting it off 10 minutes, things like that. And then
Hmm.
the thing that I shouldn't be doing, I end up just you end up like just doing it on impulse, like a lot of these bad decisions, right? Like eating the wrong
Yes.
thing, or I'm just going to check my phone really quick. I'm just going to check my email really quick. But I mean, like you said, if you waited 10 minutes to do that bad thing, now it's like now you're properly configured, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the biggest hurdle, especially for people who work from home, like writers and a lot of entrepreneurs, is just that productivity issue. And so a lot of it has to do like with structuring our environment as well. So, if you're, there's examples of famous writers who, basically disconnect their computer from the internet altogether, or where they write, for example, they may have a different computer in a different room that the only thing they do in that room is actually work, like on their book, for example. Of course, if you're, doing an online business, you can't be disconnected from the internet. But having things open in your browser, having quick buttons for Facebook or Twitter or your favorite news feed, easily accessible is going to spell disaster when it comes to your productivity. So you want to actually have those things removed, or for example, alerts on your phone or your smartphone or your tablets, for example, from let's say social media or things that are not pertaining to work should be turned off. And I know, for example, with myself, I have the iPhone has a do not disturb function. Now, I'm not sure if it's been there the whole time, but I only discovered it relatively recently. And when I get down to work on for example, I'm working on the second book of this series, I turn that thing off. So it's, for example, if someone texts me, it'll still show the text, but it won't buzz, even though it's on just vibrate, because it doesn't matter if you can hear it or it's vibrating. It doesn't make any difference. If it vibrates, you're going to look over it. And we know from research that every time you get distracted from the task you're working on, let's say you're working on content of your website, for example, you're basically, your productivity goes way down. So any distractions, whether it's your phone ring, your home phone ringing, your cell phone ringing, text alerts, anything popping up on your computer, they all distract you. And as we all know now, there are just now hundreds of possible things that'll distract you. So you got to really get to know, for example, your phone and computer settings and turn all those alerts off. They are not helping you, but they feel really good in the brain. What happens? We have a dopamine response, which makes you want to seek out rewards. It means, and basically you want to check it because it feels good. It feels good. It feels like the right thing to do. That's why people have discovered that having these alerts and everything like that are really helpful for their products, because it does distract you. It makes you think about their products or Facebook or whatever it may be, but they're actually destroying your potential. They're actually holding you back. And if people start to do these things, you're going to start to perform way, much closer to your real potential.
And you know what, like it's so funny with you bring that up about like notifications and things like that, because it's one of those things where it seems, at least with me, like it kind of seems like it creeps in, right? Like
Hmm.
with the phone, like I for sure turn off like the pop-ups for email, but then
Hmm.
sometimes I notice that sometimes every day I'll just happen to have the Facebook tab like just left open. And I think it might just be because like I've slowly become addicted, not to drugs but to
Hmm.
Facebook. So is there
Yes.
like a trick or a secret to that? Because I mean, I know that you mentioned like a lot of people who work on their websites and things like that, and I've just noticed that it seems harmless until I see other people I know like have a million tabs on, or they can't even seem to hold a conversation or even put together a complete sentence, because halfway through the sentence something else kind of pops up. So is there a secret to just getting, I guess, unaddicted to all the notifications, or is it just a matter of having these rules and just sticking with it for a few days, or what's the secret there?
Yeah, a couple of things. So one thing is to control your environment. In other words, to use the do not disturb. And like you said, you want to have rules. It's like, for example, I am going to be working from 9 to noon. I'm making it up. And the rule is I am not checking my email. I am not checking Facebook. I'm putting the do not disturb on. And you want to make it a rule, because once you make it a rule in your head, then that's, you're more likely to follow it. So you want to have something pretty solid. It's not like I'm going to try not to look so much. That's not going to work, because you have to get in touch also with your values. What's your purpose? What's your mission? What's really important to you? Is it really just to be entertained with Facebook and that kind of thing, or is it to do the best work you can do? So I'm not like a luddite. I'm not suggesting you get rid of technology. I'm I have all the gadgets and everything, and I love it. But you want to control it because the reality is the technology is now controlling us, but we need to control the technology. So what we want to do is say, look, I love checking Facebook. I feel good. It's fun. It's interesting. I want to know what's going on. Let's say, but you use it as a reward. So you say, actually, at noon, I'm going to actually check Facebook. So, but I'm not allowed to check Facebook or any of these things until I've done a certain amount of work. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. So you want to have that pretty solid as a rule in your mind. So it is definitely hurting our abilities. Lots of research how distractions hurt our ability to stay focused and be productive, and how much we can achieve in a particular amount of time. And there's some research. I'm forgetting all the details now, but basically it takes you often just a quick little distraction takes you often like 3 to 5 minutes to get back to where you were in terms of the mindset or whatever you were working on. So that's that on its own is just slowing you down. You're just wasting time. You can always check those things later. So you want to control that. There's actually a strategy that can help you as well be better able to resist distractions. And it's actually mindfulness meditation. And it sounds kind of strange. There's no religious connotations. This is really just a form of brain training. And what you do is it's very simple, between 5 and 30 minutes. So you start off low per day, 5 to 30 minutes per day. What you do is you sit in a chair, turn off, of course, all your gadgets, no distractions, and you close your eyes and you focus all of your attention on your breathing. You don't, and as soon as your mind wanders, oh, I got to call Joe later today, or this is so boring, you'll have these thoughts. You allow yourself to have the thoughts, but you do something called you diffuse from these thoughts. What you do is you say, look, I'm having the thought that this is boring because I am not my thoughts. I have all kinds of thoughts. And then you return your attention back to your breathing. You don't control your breathing. You're just focusing on it. For example, how it's a bit colder when it goes in your nose, for example, and a bit warmer when it comes out, how your stomach moves or your chest moves a little bit as you breathe. And your mind's going to constantly go all over the place. But there is fMRI research, which is a fancy, imaging thing for your brain. Research that shows that your brain, the prefrontal cortex, a part of the frontal lobe, actually thickens, like measurably thickens after a few weeks of doing this. And that part of the brain controls your ability to stay focused, to not get, overwhelmed with negative emotions, and to stay, on task and stay focused on whatever goal you're focusing on at the moment. So that's an exercise you can do that'll actually make it you make it'll improve your life all in many different ways, and there's a lot of research on that now, but help you be better able to resist distractions when you're trying to work. Those are a couple of examples. I have more, of course, but those are a couple of examples.
Well, cool, and I really like them, and I really like that. I mean, out of all these things that there are to do, to fix distractions, for example, like I mean, like you said, like don't check email in the morning, or do these things to kind of train your brain to be better, or do this mindful meditation. I keep thinking back to like when I was a lot younger, and I kind of wrote a lot of that stuff off as kind of like hippie sort of stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
kind of voodoo almost. And then now it's kind of become, I don't know, like I just from people who teach the self help or the mindset kind of stuff, or from the little techniques that I do, it seems almost like it's more like scientifically accepted, and even like a lot of the examples that you gave there were, like not just made up stuff, but actually scientifically backed from of studies and things like that. And so, and what I like about the call so far and the things that you share with us so far is that there's lots of just like little exercises. So it seems like people who are if they're only like sort of off track, or they're completely like their whole time management or their whole life, their whole mindset is a disaster. Either way, like they don't have to make any of these huge drastic changes if they don't want to. They can just apply some of your little
Yeah.
exercises. And so far, I mean, what I like is, so that you said that the 5 minute rule is great for procrastination. So instead of having to decide if you're in the moment or in the zone or whatever, because you're not yet, just do it for 5 minutes, and then after that 5 minute period, decide if the thing that you imagined you were about to do if it was actually as bad as doing it. And then the other thing, what the 10-minute rule, where if there's something, a bad habit that you do that you shouldn't do, then wait 10 minutes and then decide when you actually, are in a better mindset. And it sounds like having a good structure for the things that you do is good. So if you just have like your some kind of project you need to do or you unplug, then have a special room or a special computer or a special area or something where you can just do it. And I liked also that that when you were talking about, especially when people are just getting distracted in general, they're getting away from their purpose and their why and their mission and their values and stuff like that. So far, I mean, lots of cool little just helpful exercises where anyone can just kind of plug in. So can we talk about something big and huge? Like, out of all the people that you see that you're helping with your training and stuff, what do you see the number one mistake everyone's making that you can help them with?
Yeah, so probably if there is one tip or one thing that I've noticed, and the research supports this, if there's one thing that differentiates the most successful people from the least successful people, whatever that means, in athletics, in entrepreneurship, or whatever it is, the most successful people live their lives and make their day-to-day and moment-to-moment decisions based on their values, their purpose, and goals, not based on their moods, not based on their immediate circumstances, not based on their energy levels. Obviously, you can tell this is a sort of a summary statement of what we just talked about, but that is the global thing. So a lot of people get caught up in the moment with negative emotions and that kind of thing, and they get thrown off. They start to live their lives in a reactionary mode as opposed to a proactive mode. So, if once you figure out, and my book is all about figuring out your personality, your why, and your values, and all these exercises. As you can tell, I like to give tips and exercises that'll help people do this easily. Then you basically plan your life around those things. So one of the worst things people do is to make their to-do list on the day of, so like the morning of, I'm going to write down what do I got to do today. You're actually better off making your to-do list the night before. Of course, this is all informed, like your to-do list is all informed by having, you're going to come up with your long-term goals. In other words, I call them retirement or old age goals, all the way down to your 10-year goals, your 5-year goals, your 1-year goal, and I have all these sheets in my book to fill these out. And you want to live your life based on trying to achieve those big goals. And these are often, not necessarily making $1 million. I mean, that could be a goal, but it could also be a value-based goal, like, being a good person. I want people to, think I was a helpful, caring person, for example, and not a selfish person. And so there's a whole structure to do this in the book, but one thing you do is you make your to-do list for tomorrow. First of all, you make a weekly thing. So every Sunday, for example, you think, okay, what is the goal for this week? And you kind of figure out what can I focus on, because you're going to have a better idea of what's happening in the week. Like on Tuesday, I have a doctor's appointment, or I have to call my web designer on Wednesday. And so you have those sort of things in your schedule. You have them planned in. They can't be really moved. And then you plan around that the stuff that actually Stephen Covey in his book The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People talks about this. He calls them quadrant 2 activities. These are activities or things you need to do that are not urgent, but they're very important. So for example, exercising is not urgent, but it's important. It's going to make you better at what you do. It's going to make you smarter. It's going to actually increase blood flow to the brain and all sorts of great things. Improves mood. Let's say working on a new product that maybe you have an existing product that needs to be cared for, but the new product is not urgent necessarily, but it is important. So you got to fit those not urgent, but important tasks into the week. Then, for example, the night you don't make your to-do list on the morning of, you make it the night before. So after you've done all of your work and you're about to close down for the day, you basically go and make your to-do list for tomorrow, and you use that to guide you. Because what happens is if you make your to-do list in the morning after you've checked email, all sorts of stuff is going to come and distract you. From all sorts of emails that aren't really urgent. I mean, they seem urgent, but they're not really important. Other things that are just going to pop up. So you want to have a little bit of perspective by making the to-do list the night before. And the feeling, there's a neurological response. There's a closure feeling when you check off things on your to-do list. It makes you feel actually competent and productive, and that helps you helps you keep going because you feel like you've accomplished things. So in my book, I have a section called "Is the to-do list dead?" And I say it's not dead. It's actually really important. You want to still have to-do lists. So, you know, having your global why always in perspective, knowing what your bigger, longer term goals are and reviewing them regularly is going to help you keep on track with what's important to you, what you should be working on, and not get distracted by the minutia of the world. And we've never had this problem to this extent in human history with, like we said earlier, from texts to people calling you. Anyone can contact anyone at any point. We get hundreds of emails a day now, and it's just complete distraction, and it's making people unbelievably unproductive and not feeling fulfilled because they don't feel in control, and your life's being dictated by everyone else, it seems.
Right. And it sounds like from everything you have to say, like it's nothing super crazy, nothing super ridiculous. It's all just it sounds like a new slant on a lot of things that people know they should be doing, but it maybe haven't been doing. But because you have all these little tips and exercises, it takes this thing that, like people know they should have a to-do list, so they should, make better decisions as opposed to just making things impulsively. So what's cool about everything you talked to us about today is that it's kind of just like a new slant on things that should work a certain way, but now because you have these little tidbits, now they're actually working the way that they should. And so you're mentioning your book, and there's some cool exercises and things like that in your Achieve book. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff I've talked about is in the book. Pretty much everything except the 10-minute rule. That's going to go in the next book. I kind of discovered this after the fact, after I wrote the first book. It should have gone in the first book. Another thing that the book really focuses on that makes it different from a lot of other self-help books is getting to know your personality. So I have a big affinity to personality because my undergrad thesis, my master thesis, my PhD thesis were all based about normal personality, what it predicts, and that kind of thing. So, long story short, personality psychologists from around the world have basically determined that there are 5 global personality dimensions that we all differ on. And I can go through all of them, but I'll go through probably a key one that may be relevant to a lot of listeners. And they'll be familiar with this. So one is extroversion versus introversion. We hear this. There's books about introversion. Unfortunately, a lot of the books out there on introversion are actually mixing up a number of these global 5 personality dimensions into introversion, which is it's not really in line with research. But people who are extroverted are just like we think. They're more outgoing. They're more into exciting things. So they're attracted to excitement. In other words, they have let's see what else I can say about that. Yeah, they tend to have higher levels of energy. You experience a lot more positive and enthusiastic emotions. People who are introverted tend to be a bit more reserved, a bit more serious. They're not as highly energetic. They're not, too fond of focusing on lots of excitement and stimulation. They like working alone or one-on-one. And so knowing where you fall on this dimension of extroversion versus introversion is very useful. So, for example, people who are introverted, from a brain perspective, it really has to do with your tolerance for external stimulation. So it's not just a social thing. So people who are introverted, their brains are actually revving a little bit higher. EEG studies show this. Their brains are revving a little bit faster. It's not anxiety. It's just their brains rev faster. And what this means is they hit the red line a bit more quickly than an extrovert, whose brains are revving, a lot slower. So what this means is, when you have external stimulation and you're introverted, you're going to only be able to tolerate so much stimulation, whether it's social, whether it's being in Las Vegas. It could be sounds, music. It could be working like in an open concept office environment with all the noise and distractions. Think of like a newsroom environment. People who are introverted are going to get overstimulated very quickly, and if you know that about yourself, what it means is you can still handle those, but you can only do it in short spurts, and you have to have recovery times where you're alone and or you're relaxing and you're not being stimulated. People who are extroverted are the opposite. They actually feed off all that stimulation, and they feel really abnormal, which manifests in being bored when they're working alone, and that sort of thing. So they need to seek out lots of stimulation, whether it's social or otherwise. So a lot of people work from home. It doesn't mean everyone works from home is introverted. So if you tend to be on the higher side of what I described, in other words, you're extroverted, you're going to just have to make sure that you seek out experiences that are exciting or socially stimulating, whether it's you do some hardcore rock climbing after work, or you go for or during your lunch hour, or you spend make sure you spend times with friends, and talk to people and do that, because you have to think of this as a need. And if you don't get that extroverted needs met, you're going to actually feel uncomfortable, unfulfilled, unhappy. And vice versa, if you're really introverted, working from home is usually ideal, and just realize that you're going to need, if you have to do stuff where you have to meet lots of people and do lots of meeting, you're going to get really exhausted really quickly. And knowing that about yourself is going to be helpful to be able to predict what you can handle and how to perform at your peak.
And that's kind of interesting because as opposed to just some people, like the natural tendency is for people to think, well, in this situation I act I act this way, or I tend to be more like this. But it sounds like once they figure out like where what they, where do they actually fall in these tests and things like that, then they can actually make actual logic based decisions where they, like you said, they can say like I need a exciting break, I need to go rock climbing, or I need to, or I'm fine being in this environment. It's almost kind of spooky, right? It's almost like
Mhm.
pulling under the hood and figuring out like what type of engine you have or something.
Oh yeah, and these are and so when I talk about these, this is the very first section I talk about when it comes to achieving your main goals for you, is you really got to know yourself. This is like the hardware. Your personality is your hardware. About 50%, so 50%, is genetically inherited. It's inherited from your obviously your parents. And the other 50% is due to your environment or your experiences you've had in life, more so in early life and the first 20 years of your life, and less so as an adult. But your personality can still change. And something to keep in mind is you don't want to get too don't want to label yourself too much and say, well, I'm an introvert, I can't do those sorts of things, or I'm an extrovert, I can never work alone or do those sorts of things. The research doesn't really support that. It's really about how much you can handle of each of those things. So people who are naturally biologically introverted can still act extroverted, and they still can have lots of good social skills, for example. It's just that they can only handle it for certain amounts of time before they just feel overstimulated, and it's just not fun. And so we do live in an extrovertedly biased world, where extroverts are, the idea considered to be the ideal personality, where the part where you fall in that personality dimension is supposed to be ideal. But of course, the introvert books out there, which are not perfectly accurate, unfortunately, but they do. I do agree with the idea that the introverts do have a lot to offer, and but just knowing where you stand, you can help predict, where you're gonna, where you're gonna succeed and where you're gonna potentially fail. So, a lot of people learn this through work. They'll be like, I worked in a library and I loved it, or I worked in sales at like a Best Buy where I had to talk to customers all day and it was loud, and and I love that, or I hated that. And often these have to do with our brains, hardware in terms of introversion and extroversion. So just knowing that about yourself is really important, but not, don't take it as suggesting that you can't do the opposite. You can do the opposite, like an introvert can act like an extrovert, for example. It's just that you can do it only for a limited amount of time before you start to feel burnt out. So you want to live your life congruent with your natural personality, and you got to know that about yourself to be able to, perform at your peak, basically perform at your best and be as productive as you can, and just be happy and satisfied with what you're doing.
I mean, that's what we all want, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so cool. I mean, I think that's a really good message, and I like everything you have to say. And so, could you tell everyone one more time what the name of the book is, where they can get the book, and where they can find out anything else you have for sale, or anything else more about you?
Yeah, definitely. So the book is called, it's on Amazon, in paperback, it's on Kindle, and it's on Audible as well. The Audible came out relatively recently, and I've gotten lots of good feedback on that. I didn't narrate it myself. I got a professional narrator, voice actor guy who does like Fox commercials, and he's really great. His name's Chris A. Bell. So the book is called Achieve. The subtitles: Find Out Who You Are, what you really want, and how to make it happen. My website is friesenperformance.com. Friesen's Friesen. It's all one word, friesenperformance.com. I have a newsletter, and I give tips when I'm on podcasts like this, for example. I send it out. I'm on Twitter at friesenperform, and I'm on Facebook. If you look up Friesen Sport and Performance Psychology, I believe is you can find my Facebook page. I post a lot of articles, either written by myself or podcasts I've been on, or a lot of articles though on things like I've talked about, tips for being more productive, to be more successful, stuff about personality, stuff about the brain that are really applicable, that have an applied message, not just hardcore research science. It's more about articles about how to maximize your potential. So those are the best ways to get in contact with me. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. I mean, you shared a lot of good tips, and I like a lot of it. And I think that I'm going to be using the 5 minute rule and the 10-minute rule in my own life. So, I mean, lots of good stuff. And thanks for being on the show, Chris.
Yeah.